Welcome into Bears Weekly, powered by IGS Energy, a Chicago Bears network production. Bears Weekly is brought to you by Advocate Healthcare, Athletico Physical Therapy, CDW, Connie's Pizza, IGS Energy, and Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Jeff Joniak, a.k.a. the Mayor of Bearsville, and his sidekick, Tom the Surfmaster Thayer.
Well, rare is the person who could uplift a room in the manner Virginia Halas McCaskey could with just her warm smile and hello. The matriarch of the Bears and the daughter of George Halas, the founding father of the National Football League, has passed. And with that, we offer our prayers, condolences to the McCaskey and Halas families, the entire Bears family, and Bears fans that span the globe. This is a special edition of Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 on the Chicago Bears Radio Network with Super Bowl winning Bears guard Tom Thayer and Jim Miller, the former Bears quarterback from SiriusXM NFL Radio, joining us shortly. I'm Jeff Joniak. We'll take this hour to look back at a life well lived, a long life that ends after 102 years, but one that leaves a unique legacy filled with love, kindness, compassion, selflessness, and charity. For those of us fortunate enough to get to know Mrs. McCaskey over the years, or those who have met her only once, we deeply feel this loss because she will be cherished forever. Tom, I know you feel exactly the same way.
Yeah, she's an NFL royalty. She is football royalty. She's the development of the biggest game in the history of the United States, royalty. She's got all those nice things that you said about her. She also has a world of experience that will never be relived by anybody. Since the inception of the game that was built through her father, through the long life that she had and the experiences that she had as a young kid in football to where she was experienced up into the game, up until the conclusion of this season. She's just an incredible person. She has the passion for the sports, unlike a lot of others. And she's the type of person, if there was more people like her, it would be a better world.
100%. You took the words right out of the mouth. Many people told me that same thing today. It would be a better world. Coming up on the program, we're going to be joined by former Bears, Ron Rivera, Hall of Famer Mike Singletary, and former Chicago Tribune NFL writer Don Pierson. We'll hear from Jason McKee. We'll hear from Jerry Azumah. And in moments, Brian Urlacher to share their stories and define her impact on this great franchise and the NFL. We thank our producers tonight, Sean Graney, Dan Barilli, and Jordan Tredup. And the executive producer of the Bears Radio Network is Eric Ostrowski. So, do we have Jim? He's at the Super Bowl in New Orleans. And, Jim, I know you met this woman and were a Bear during a great period of time when the Bears went to the playoffs in 2001. So I know on those trips when you saw the wins, you saw the expression on her face was all good.
Yeah, it's a sad day. Just a wonderful human being, like you said, always there, always traveling to the games, always a part of the team. And, and her husband, Ed. I always bring up Ed. Those two were so wonderful together. And, Ed, we had some of the greatest conversations in the training room, and same with Virginia. And, so it's a sad day in the NFL for, I think we understand how the direction the NFL is going, but to have these family-owned franchises like, say, the Rooneys or, say, the McCaskeys, it's special. And there's a lot of rich history with those great organizations. And, so thoughts and prayers to the McCaskey family, to everybody in the organization. And, loyalty is a wonderful trait, and I definitely believe and know that the McCaskey family definitely have that trait. And it's just a sad day all around for the NFL.
I think it's super fitting that the Super Bowl is in New Orleans this week, because that's a locker room that Virginia McCaskey was in at the conclusion of our Super Bowl that we won. And she was had the biggest smile in the building, was big as anybody that was inside that building. And for this Super Bowl to be played in New Orleans this year, when that's where Virginia McCaskey was when she represented the Chicago Bears in acceptance of the Lombardi Trophy, it is fitting that Super Bowl is being played in New Orleans this week.
And fitting that the Bears defeated the Green Bay Packers on the foot of Cairo Santos to end the 2024 season with a win. So she went out in fine fashion with a win there. A statement from the team earlier, just a portion of it. While we are sad, we are comforted knowing Virginia Halas McCaskey lived a long, full, faith-filled life and is now with the love of her life on earth. The family said she guided the Bears for 4 decades and based every business decision on what was best for Bears players, coaches, staff, and fans. Just a short time ago, also down in New Orleans where Jim is covering the Super Bowl, Bears Hall of Famer Brian Urlacher. I was able to reach him on the phone before he attends a function, the great function that Coach Ditka started, the Wounded Warriors Party, always a big one at the Super Bowl. Here's my conversation with the Bears middle linebacker.
Brian, when you heard the news, what's the first thing that popped in your head?
I was sad. I saw her. She was at my Hall of Fame party, and I saw her, I think, the next year at a home game for the Bears. It was actually the Philadelphia playoff game. I saw her in the box, and she's so nice and so sweet, But, yeah, she showed up to my Hall of Fame party. I think the game was over at like 11, and her and the family rolled in around 12:30 after the game just to pay their respects. It was pretty awesome, but really sad this morning when I heard the news.
Yeah, I was at that party, and I think it was like, 12:15. She stayed a good
hour.
So.
Yeah, that was fun.
Hey, you know
so
what?
nice of them
she
to show up.
loved her Bears players, Brian.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was mutual. We loved her as well. It was nice to see her whenever we saw her in the building. She was there every day. When I was playing, she was still young. She was in her 80s. How about that? But she still went to work every day.
I can't get out of my head, though, the NFC title game, the snow globe game.
Yeah.
And she's there with a humongous smile on her face, soaking it all in, ready to receive the George S. Halas trophy to signify the NFC champion from Terry Bradshaw. Is that something that lives in your mind, in your memory?
That's one of my favorite moments of my career, honestly, just to be on that stage at our stadium in front of our fans, playing the way we played that day, to be receiving the George Halas trophy that we won, and his daughter's receiving it with us up there on the stage is pretty awesome. That's when people ask me what one of my favorite moments is, that's in my top 2 or 3. Just a cool situation, to have my teammates up there and her up there as well receiving that trophy was pretty special.
You were a Bear for a long time, so did you ever have any private moments with her conversations? Did you happen to pick her brain, or because she was always about family, so she was probably checking on your family.
Yeah, she's always. My kids met her a few times when they were in the building. Yeah, everything is family first. You know that from playing there for the amount of time I did. They all are in the facility every day doing their jobs. But yeah, we didn't. No really private conversations. Just like, how's your family? How are you? That was most of our conversations consisted of that. I don't know that we ever talked about football. Honestly, it was always families and how things are going in that aspect.
Right, that is one thing. Not a lot of football conversation. It was always about the person. Lastly, before I let you go and appreciate it, I know you're down to the Super Bowl, ready to enjoy tonight's party with Coach Ditka. Passing the baton on. So thank you for doing that.
It's been fun. It's been fun, Jeff, and he does such a great job with Gridiron Greats. I heard your coach is doing better. I'm excited about that. I'd seen a couple of years ago. I saw him, and it was kind of sad seeing him like that. And then I heard some news the other day from one of the women who run this organization saying that he's doing a lot better. He's talking better. And she said, tell me hi. So I was excited about that.
That's Bears linebacker Brian Urlacher, the Hall of Famer. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Tom's old teammate and former Bears coach, defensive coordinator, and outstanding player Ron Rivera will join us here on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Welcome back to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network. Here's your host, the voice of the Bears, Jeff Joniak.
He is brought to you by IGS Energy. Jeff Joniak, Tom Thayer, and Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio covering the Super Bowl down in New Orleans, a place that Ron Rivera celebrated with Tom Thayer and the rest of his teammates in Super Bowl. Win in 1986 after the 85 season, Super Bowl 20. And Ron, kind enough to join us. Unfortunately, I made that phone call to you today, Ron, with the news, and your reaction was, okay, he fell off. Okay, we'll get him right back here in a second. So the calls are the toughest thing, Tommy. The calls of the bad news that somebody has passed away.
As soon as the news did get out there, I heard from a lot of different corners of the country about the passing of Virginia. And I think because of everybody knew that how old that she had grown to, that everybody now was not only concerned, but they were so appreciative of her adventure in her life and her accomplishments and everything. So I think that was a significant part of everybody's concern in reaching out.
And Jim, listening to Brian Urlacher, I loved talking to him about what was going on there. Great memories for him. You know, he was very flattered that she was at his Hall of Fame party at that hour.
Well, yeah. I mean, hey, the Bears have a recorded history. I mean, they've got the most Hall of Famers of anybody, and obviously with Hester and Brian, the most recent, and Mongo McMichael, and I mean, there's a sense of pride now. I mean. She knows what that means. She knows the history of the league and how special that is. And, that's something in her and Ed's trophy case and Papa Halas's trophy case of all the great players that they've introduced to the country that have played for the Chicago Bears. And there's a sense of pride, no different than I'm sure her children. She's got wonderful children who all work for the Bears, from Mike on down to Pat and Rich and Brian and what they do and how a part of it they are. So there's a sense of pride, and she should be proud. And, boy, what a wonderful life she lived.
No question about it. Ron Rivera now kind enough to join us. Chico, how you doing, man? Think about what Mrs. McCartney witnessed firsthand, from Red Grange to Sid Luckman, the 40s championship run, the 63 team, the 85 team, alive for 8 of the 9 championships. I mean, nobody on this planet has been able to see all that, Ron.
No, nobody has, and that's the amazing thing about who she is. She's grown up in this situation and circumstances. She's been a very big part of the NFL, and she's a big part of Chicago Bear lore. I mean, she saw more than anybody else, and now, unfortunately, we've lost her. And I think her legacy will carry on, especially if you were a guy that played for that organization and she allowed you to become part of it. I mean, that to me is what's really, really special.
Hey, Ron, I grew up in the Chicagoland area, so I've known who Virginia McCaskey is my entire life. So you come from the West Coast, and you come into the building, and you have a chance for the first time to see Virginia McCaskey, to be around her for the period of your career, to get to an understanding of how serious she is about the sport of football. Do you ever remember your initial reaction or your introduction to her?
I do. What it was interesting was, when you made the team back in the day, and I don't know if they did that to you, Tom, in 85, but in 84, what happened was Coach Ditka had all the rookies line up in front of the team, and Mrs. McCaskey came, and she Coach introduced us to her. And what happened was each one of us was given Halas by Halas and gave us a welcome. And it was an amazing thing because, she was such an icon.
Mexico station.
Well, for me, Ron, I know you didn't have the opportunity to come to the Bears' 100th anniversary, but I had the opportunity, and obviously Jeff and Tom were hosting. And from your standpoint, just talk about that history, talk about that tradition. I know you were coaching and doing your thing, but all those Bears that I just mentioned, there's more Chicago Bears in the Hall of Fame, and there's a sense of pride, I think, from Virginia from that standpoint.
There is, and the thing about Mrs. McCaskey more than anything else, though, was how much pride she took in us. And that, I think, was one of the things. And, now I will say this. I know one thing. One team that she loved for us to beat was anytime we beat Green Bay, you could always see that smile on her face when you got on the airplane, and that was always neat to see.
Ron Rivera joining us here on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network. Tom, Ron, and Jim, the crazy thing, she had a personal relationship with each of the 30 Hall of Famers associated with the Bears. Think about
absolutely.
that, Tom.
No, it's absolutely, because just as the way, she had a relationship with each one of her players. I mean, she was there during training camp. She was there. She was coming into the facility all the time. She'd walk into meetings on occasion. So she was around, and she was there for us to see and for her to greet. So that was something that was very special.
Ron, in the course of our lifetime, whether it was Ed McCaskey, Virginia McCaskey, Mike McCaskey, all of them, when you think about your career and what came of your career, do you think that you would have got into coaching if you weren't surrounded by a family-owned team like the Chicago Bears in the environment that we both grew up in?
You know what? I'm not sure, because the thing about them, the thing that was special about them was they wanted to make sure, that we were given every opportunity. And that's one thing that I will always remember, is just the fact that they gave us that kind of an opportunity to grow as football players, grow as people. And when the opportunity came to give me a chance, Ed McCaskey helped give me my opportunity to get into the NFL as a coach.
Well, Coach, Tom Thayer talked about it earlier, about your Super Bowl 20 victory and the irony. Here, that was probably one of the ultimate highs in the Chicago Bears organization, and Virginia was a part of it right there with all you guys. And then here, the Super Bowl in New Orleans. And I think Tom pretty much encapsulated that it's kind of come full circle. And what a wonderful life her and Ed have lived, and it just really the irony of it.
Oh, and it's truly ironic, just the fact that it's here in New Orleans. I just happened to be here at NFL Honors, and I'm at the event right now. And the crazy part about more than anything else is just the fact that, she was so iconic, and that now in one of the more iconic places to host a Super Bowl, we lose her. And so that was something that I will, most certainly remember.
All right, Ron, we'll let you go. Enjoy the show. NFL Honors. Her name will definitely be mentioned tonight there. Enjoy it down in New Orleans. Thanks for taking the time.
I promise you'll be remembered. But I appreciate you guys, and God bless Virginia McCaskey.
Thanks, Ron.
Appreciate it. Ron Rivera, Bears linebacker and Bears defensive coordinator for that 2005 team that went to the playoffs. Think some of the responses from throughout the league from the teams, everybody weighing in. I'll just take a couple of highlights here. For example, Michael Bidwell in Arizona, greatest legacy, the character, compassion, and kindness she demonstrated. There'll never be another like her. In Minnesota, carried herself with grace and integrity. You talk about the Carolina owners, the Teppers, an incredible steward of the NFL, a trailblazer. The Denver Broncos, an indelible legacy of leadership, grace, and love of football that will continue to inspire for generations. And, of course, the commissioner of the National Football League also weighing in today. We'll hear from some of that and his comments on this passing of Virginia Halas McCaskey. We will take a break. Coming up at the top of the hour, another Hall of Famer, Mike Singletary, will join the program. This is Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Welcome back to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network. Here's your host, the voice of the Bears, Jeff Joniak.
Have a new or gently used coat laying around? Still time to head to your local Jewel Osco until February 10th. So just 4 days from now, and donate one of your new or gently used coats to the 36th annual Chicago Bears Coat Drive and help keep Chicagoans warm this winter with Tom Thayer, a Super Bowl winning Bears guard, and Jim Miller, former Bears quarterback from SiriusXM NFL Radio. We are celebrating the life of Mrs. Virginia Halas McCaskey. Her passing today, garnering the headlines here in the football world and in Chicago. George H. McCaskey, when they celebrated her 100th birthday in 2023, described her greatest qualities as her grace, quiet dignity, humility, and gratitude, and revealed that she continues to inspire him every day in every way with a remarkable combination of grit and grace. Okay, a very nice woman, correct, Tom? Faithful, love family, but she's tough.
Because she was sincere. She had the passion for the game. She didn't want to be interrupted while she was watching the game. She took notes diligently. She had an opinion of the performance on the field. And I think that's what caught people by surprise a lot of the time, was they didn't realize what they were going up against when they met Virginia McCaskey, either at a game, before or after a game. Because on a football Sunday, that's all it was about. From the time we got on the buses on Saturdays till we got off the buses on Sunday, there was a lot of emotion that went into those trips, but there was a lot of emotions that were attached to each and every play, every game.
Jim, family meant everything, but think about this, 11 children, 21 grandchildren, 40 great-grandchildren, and 4 great-great-grandchildren. By definition, that is matriarch.
Without a doubt. And there's a lot of nurturing and a lot of care involved there. And you want to know what? I give her credit for this. I love how she reached out, because obviously I live in Detroit, and Sheila Ford Hemp obviously took over the Lions, and it was her, it was Gail Benson, and Adam Strunk down there for the Houston or for the Tennessee Titans, excuse me. That she reached out to him, and she really welcomed in Sheila Ford Hemp, and really welcomed her with open arms and what to expect, and here's what it is. And Sheila, I know locally in Detroit, has spoken glowingly about Virginia McCaskey and really the advice she has given her as she's taken on this challenge of turning around the Detroit Lions. So credit to Virginia from that front as well.
Often referred to as the First Lady of the NFL, or George would often say the First Lady of Sport. The gifts, the connection to faith, seriously very important. 6:15 Mass in the first pew, Tommy.
Yeah,
daily.
I was thinking about Virginia because we're not the same person the first day we walk in the building than the last day we walk out of the building at the end of our career. But each and every single time that you walk by Mrs. McCaskey, you want to leave an impression on her that you are the quality of person that she expects you to be. And I remember when they opened up the new Halas Hall and they were opening a chapel there, and she had invited some guests to come in there and go to that Mass with her. And the invitation is so special that you want to go in there with her approval and have approval at the end of the day. And I think every one of us, whether you're talking about Ron Rivera coaching for the Bears or the way Brian Urlacher reflected about his time with Virginia, every single one of us who had the pleasure of walking in the Halas Hall, it was about making sure that we left in an impression on Virginia that she would be proud of.
And she showed up for important moments in people's lives, funerals. I know she was there for your mom and dad.
Yeah, she was there, and it was probably the only time I really got emotional at my mom's service is when Virginia walked in, because it was a special moment. Because I think back in the day when they used to host a luncheon for the wives and the mothers of all the players. And I remember the first time my mom went to one and how impressed she was with Virginia McCaskey, her delivery, her presence in the room, her conversation. And so I was always excited for, my mom that coming from Joliet, Illinois, got to go and spend luncheon afternoon with a woman like Virginia McCaskey.
NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, his statement today, she leaves a legacy of class, dignity, and humanity. Faith, family, and football, in that order, were her North Stars, and she lived by the simple adage to always, quote, do the right thing. Tom Thayer, Jeff Joniak, Jim Miller, this is Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network, shortly to be joined by Hall of Famer Mike Singletary as we celebrate a life lived. One of the things she did, she behind the scenes, a lot of things, but nativity sets, Tommy, the orange and blue rosaries. I know I have many. When my kids were born, they got them. That connection that was so important to her, the charitable side.
Yeah, I mean, the whole charitable side, and whether it's as significant as a yearly holiday that she loved to celebrate, and she did it traditionally. But I always think about Virginia. In recent history, I gave her a couple books. And she went on to read the books, and then she wrote me these handwritten letters of appreciation. And her penmanship is like an artist. I've saved the letters, and I look at them frequently because I just think of the time, the approach that she took to write these letters and how much it meant to her to make sure that she did something that she would approve of, that everybody else would be inspired by.
Jim, I know this, that most seasons, and I don't know if it happened every season, but in recent vintage, she would come and speak to the team before, I think the rookies in particular, but she would speak to the team at the start of training camp. Were you a witness to that at any point in your time with the Bears?
No, she didn't do that, but at least when I was there, she did not do that. But I do remember this. My wife Leah would come home from the Bears care. She would go. That's something that Virginia had started, and she was very involved with the Bears care, and they had the gala and all that, and all those events. Those were weekly events, and I know a lot of the players' wives and a lot of people in the community would go to those Bear Care events, and that Virginia was very involved in that, and that was important for her. And that was a big part of getting the wives together and getting people to get to know one another. And I think that was a big help for players as well.
Yeah, Bears Care, the establishment in 2005. Since that time, Bears Care has issued grants totaling more than $31.5 million to 225 qualifying agencies to improve the quality of life for people in the Chicagoland community, especially disadvantaged children and their families. Certainly the breast and ovarian cancer awareness and the medical research. You know, I hosted that event for a long time, and the number of coaches that have come through, and they all come to the event. But one sticks out. Coach Dave Tobe, his wife had cancer, and the study and the money spent on the research for this particular form of cancer helped save her life. So, you know, the branches that from this individual and the heart of gold that she has, helping others, and through the Piccolo family and the relationship with Brian, the relationship with Walter Payton. I mean, these are two pillars in her life for sure.
Well, all of those Bear Care charity events, it was always a special moment because all the Bear alumni, we used to go to the upper level of the Cadillac area of Soldier Field, and we'd get to take a picture with Virginia McCaskey, all of us and only her. And through all the years of having those pictures, it was a special moment because as soon as they made the announcement for all alumni to gather in that specific area, they were all there, and they did it with immediacy out of respect for the person that was our leader.
And, of course, the Bears present an award now every year to a team employee who demonstrates the values of grace, humility, loyalty, and dedication. It's called the Virginia McCaskey Award, and it's an important one. There's a plaque at Halas Hall every year for that winner. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be joined by other former Bears here coming up. This is Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
This is Bears Weekly with the voice of the Bears for 24 years, Jeff Joniak on the Bears Radio Network.
This segment of Bears Weekly is brought to you by CDW. People to get it with Jeff Joniak, Tom Thayer, and Jim Miller from SiriusXM NFL Radio down in New Orleans. Pleased to be joined now by a man who covered the Bears for more than 4 decades, the great writer from the Chicago Tribune, Don Pierson, now enjoying retirement and kind enough to join us for reflection because Don, along with our good friend Dan Pompei, authored the Chicago Bears Centennial Scrapbook back in 2019. Don, good evening, and thank you for joining us. First of all, your thoughts on the passing of Virginia, somebody that you and Dan spent, I believe Dan told me, 20 hours going through the history of the Bears through the eyes of Virginia McCaskey in her home in Des Plaines back then.
Well, you're right, Jeff. It was a lot of time, and I as Dan, feel very privileged to have been able to spend that time with her. She was a remarkable lady, and had an amazing. I think she was 96 when we talked to her, and she had an amazing memory.
What is the one story told out of so many that really sticks with you, that kind of exemplifies what she witnessed over the 100+ years of Bears football, or just about her as a person?
You're going to restrict me to one story, Jeff?
No. Go ahead. Take your shots.
Well, one of the things that I recall that was sort of amazing to her was that when she was young, she had a piggy bank. She and her brother Muggs, George Jr., and during the Depression, her dad had to raid that piggy bank in order to make payroll before the ticket sales came in. And when you think about that, it's really sort of mind-boggling to think that here's a team, really an industry that's 105 years old now, and she was 102, and it's just amazing that someone spanned the entire history of a sport.
Hey, Don, this is Tom Thayer. Great to talk to you. Do you ever recall a moment, maybe back at the beginning of your career covering the Bears, or at some portion during your career, that you kind of realized how serious the Bears were to Virginia, because a lot of people don't get to see that side of her at a game, covering a game, or post-game.
Good point, Tom. I know she was stunned, as we all were, when Muggs died at age 54 in 1979, and she was really unprepared, really put in an untenable position. And her father has to be accountable for that, because even after her brother died, her father refused to provide her with any kind of preparation. They really had no succession plan. And I remember Virginia saying, well, more than most people, my dad thought himself immortal. And I think that's really come back to haunt the Bears over the years, because it put her in a very difficult position. And I think that people don't realize, as you said, how much the Bears meant to her. I'm not sure she realized it herself until she was thrust into this position, and she spent the rest of her life seeing her role as sort of a sacred duty to preserve that legacy of her father.
Mm-hmm. Well, Don, Jim Miller here. Good to talk to you. And I brought it up from a local perspective, because I live just north of Detroit, of how she impacted Sheila Ford Hamp and the other, or Gail Benson, other women owners in the NFL, and, how important it is, to really know how to own. And Sheila Ford Hamp kind of took that torch and wanted to really carry it. And I think, when you look at Virginia, she was a big part in talking to Sheila Ford of areas that she can focus on for her team to do well.
Another good point, Jim, and you'd have to add the Mara family in there and the Rooney family.
Yeah.
And I think the women who were all friends, good friends with Virginia, always looked up to her. I remember Paul Tagliabue called her the first lady of the NFL, and she certainly earned that position and was a role model for many of those owners. She was very gracious, very unpretentious. She knew what she didn't know, and what fans, I'm sure you've talked about this, but what fans have to understand, and they're understandably impatient, but she was as impatient as any of the fans. She really understood how important the team and its success was to the city.
Don Pierson, our guest here for a couple of more moments as we look back on the life of Virginia Halas McCaskey. The NFL Films documentary, and Jim's alluded to the other women in the NFL, A Lifetime of Sundays, is a must-watch. If you can find it, check it out. You're going to learn a lot about the history of the National Football League and the impact of these women. Don, I get a kick out of the oldest stories, though, the NFL's first postseason game indoors at Chicago Stadium, 1932. The Portsmouth Spartans and the Chicago Bears. The first NFL championship game, the Giants and Bears. She was 9 years old. I mean,
she was there.
She was there. Or the defeat of the Redskins, 73-0 in the 1940 championship game. What lit her up? When you asked her these questions, and what put the biggest smile on her face?
Well, she always said it was a little bit of a surprise to us, but she always said she appreciated the 1963 championship because that was the happiest she'd ever seen her father, because her father had been under a lot of pressure. People thought the game had passed him by, and maybe it had, but he won that championship in 1963, and she thought that was the happiest she had ever seen him. And of course, for her personally, of course, there was nothing that surpassed the 1985 experience.
Don, you think of all your experiences and putting together all the information from the 100-year celebration, and I think it was one of the greatest events in the history of the Chicago Bears. Was there any topic that was off limits, or is everything answerable by Virginia?
Tom, I think I say she had a great memory, and she did, but her dad was very secretive, as you know. She wasn't so much secretive, but she was very protective. I wouldn't say things were off limits. She answered every question. She's not a raconteur. She didn't slap her thigh and say, remember the time that I was carried through the train station by Red Grain. She wasn't like that, but she answered the questions as best she could. She was protective, but I don't think anything was really off limits. You got to remember, this is someone that had to pull the trigger on her eldest son as the president of the Bears. That took a lot of courage, and I don't think anything was off limits for her.
Don, the thing that go ahead, Jimmy.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jeff.
No, go ahead, because we have time for one more. Go ahead, Jimmy.
Well, I was just going to ask you, Donna, just what it meant, for her father, when you purchased the Decatur Staleys, and what the Bears have become. Look at how big the NFL is, and how, when Ed passed away, and she has really taken over, and then of course, to bring along George McCaskey and the rest of the family members to be a part of something special. It truly is unique in this day and age in the National Football League, and it is a sense of pride, and it should be with the McCaskey family.
You're absolutely right, and we'll never see anything like it in sports again. I was thinking today, George used to say how they charged each other on the running board in Canton $100 entry fee, and they really didn't. They just to make them look legitimate. They really didn't have $100 among them to rub together. And now this franchise is worth more than $6 billion, and to think that she passed on the week of the Super Bowl, which is the signature event of the industry that father really founded, seems a bit providential to me.
In the city where Tom Thayer and the boys won Super Bowl 20 on top of it. Don, appreciate it so much. You're a book of knowledge. Hope you're enjoying your retirement. Stay healthy, and thank you for all your time. And thank you for all your coverage of the Bears for 4 decades. It was great stuff.
Well, thanks. It's great to talk to you guys.
Don Pierson, our guest here on Bears Weekly. One note from his partner in crime on that collective book, Dan Pompei. After the 73-0 win of the 1940 championship game, Don writes in The Athletic today, fans tore down the goalpost, and she was given some of the splinters, wooden splinters from the goalpost. For years, she kept them in her jewelry box. I mean, you can't get this anywhere else. It's great stuff. All right, final segment coming up. We'll be joined by Jerry Azumah and our teammate Jason McKee. It's all coming up next on Bears Weekly on ESPN 1000 of the Bears Radio Network.
Welcome back to Bears Weekly on the Bears Radio Network. Here's your host, the voice of the Bears, Jeff Joniak.
By Athletico Physical Therapy. Visit athletico.com to request an in-clinic or virtual appointment and start feeling better tomorrow. We're celebrating the life of Virginia Halas McCaskey, known at Hal Hall as Mrs. McCaskey. Tom Thayer, Jim Miller, kind enough to step away from Super Bowl coverage to join us in this special show. Heard a lot of great stories. Do we have Jerry on the line? Okay, Jerry Azumah. Joining us now. We're also going to hear from Jason McKee. Jerry, thanks for taking the time on short notice to join us tonight. I know you've been busy with family. You joined the board of directors, as a player, yes, but you board of directors of Bears Care in 2006, and the president of Bears Care. I know that means a lot to you, but with that, you had many, many meetings about Bears Care and what it should be with Virginia. So what's your perspective on all of this, and how it impacts that organization?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, my condolences to the family and the loved ones of Virginia and pretty much the whole entire, NFL. I'm sure they're feeling a certain way about this. But, yes, I was very fortunate enough to spend some time with Virginia through Bears Care. And I'll never forget when I got asked to be on that board. And, we just had a really heartfelt talk about what she wanted to do within the community and everything. And that just speaks to like who she is as a person. She's always about family, faith, and then football, obviously. And then, she's always about individuals, their family. And, that's one thing that I definitely remember about her, and we'll continue to always remember about her.
Also jumping in on us right now is the Hall of Famer Mike Singletary. Mike, thanks for taking out the time on our remaining moments. You heard the news. What was your initial thought? Where did your mind and heart go with the passing of Virginia McCaskey today?
Well, first of all, when I heard the news, my mind immediately went to the Pro Bowl. Every year when my wife and I were fortunate enough to go to the Pro Bowl, when it was in Hawaii, Ed McCaskey and Virginia would take us to dinner. And that was always one of the highlights of being able to make the Pro Bowl, being able to be a part of the Bears organization. That always kind of went to the heart of what I felt about the Chicago Bears. Being able to be in an organization where, they always talked about, on the business side of it, it was one thing. But it really showed me on the family side of it, how important they made you feel. And by she and Ed McCaskey doing that, that was really always a heartfelt thing.
Mike, Tom Thayer here, and it's good to talk to you as always. Hey, Mike, so, I always say that we're not the same person walking in the building as we are walking out of the building at the end of our career. So during the time of your career, what influences was Virginia on your life, not necessarily your football life, but the life of Mike Singletary?
Wow. Can you ask that in another way? I want to make sure I answer that right. That's a mouthful. Say that again.
Well, no, I'm just saying, so as a young man, when we walk into the Bears, when we're drafted from wherever we come from, and then we have a chance to spend a good career up at Halas Hall, and then you think about the influence that Virginia is on your life when you leave the building. What was Virginia? What was her influences in your life? The father, Mike Singletary, not necessarily the football player, Mike Singletary.
Okay, well, when I think about Virginia and her influence, I always think about consistency. Being the mother of the organization, always being steady. Always being faithful, always having a quiet strength, and being able to know that no matter what was happening in the organization, no matter who was the president of the organization, no matter who was the GM of the organization, you knew that somehow Virginia McCaskey, she was going to have influence. She was going to have power. She was going to bring the pendulum back to where it needs to be in order to make it right. And I think that when you know that, growing up in an organization, growing up in professional football, coming in as a young man out of college or what have you, leaving and knowing what it takes to be a great organization, it was always wonderful to know that kind of influence and that kind of consistency and that kind of character was in the building.
Well, Coach Jim Miller here. Good to talk to you. And my last interaction with Virginia was at the 100-year anniversary. And I was sitting along at that time. Brad Childress was a part of the organization. He and I sat in a corner and just watched every player go up to Virginia and say thank you, for this event and being a part of the Chicago. And, it's like a proud parent. You could just tell she was just so excited, and it meant the world to her that every player came up and talked to her and said thank you, and I love being a part of the Bears. And it was wonderful to see. It was something special, and Brad and I just sit and took it all in and watched every player do that, and it was wonderful. What was your last interaction with Virginia? I know you mentioned the Pro Bowls, but maybe where you had a good heart-to-heart.
Well, these last few years have been kind of tough to have a heart-to-heart. But I just remember my last interaction with her. My wife and I were together just a couple of years ago, and being able to let her know how much we appreciated her, let her know how much we really enjoy her quiet leadership, her quiet presence, and her steadiness. Being able to always know that she was there. She may not say much, but you knew that there was always a lot going on her knees praying for that organization and her team and the family.
Mike, we're going to let you go. Appreciate it very much for your thoughts and enjoy. I'm assuming you're at the Super Bowl festivities down there in New Orleans, so enjoy that, and God bless, my friend.
Thank you. God bless you.
Mike Singletary. That's going to wrap up our show. What a show it was. It moved quickly. Thanks to everybody. The executive producer of the Bears Radio Network, Eric Ostrowski. Our producers, Dan Briley, Jordan Tredup, and Sean Graney in studio. Thanks to our guests, Ron Rivera, Mike Singletary, Don Pierson, Jerry Azumah. We didn't get to everybody. But for Tom Thayer and Jim Miller, I'm Jeff Joniak. This is my thought, my final thought. Humility has presence. Mrs. McCaskey had it, and now she's going to lift it all the way to the heavens. God bless the family. God bless Bears fans, and condolences to everybody in the organization and the McCaskey and Halas family. That's going to do it for us. This has been Bears Weekly on the new radio home of the Chicago Bears, ESPN Chicago. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the Chicago Bears Network presentation of Bears Weekly, hosted by the mayor of Bearsville, Jeff Joniak, and Surfmaster Tom Thayer. Podcasts are available on the Chicago Bears official app, brought to you by Verizon and Apple Podcasts. Bears Weekly has been brought to you by Miller Lite.